Hello, I'm Jakob from DigitalService. I'm very happy to be here, and this is my colleague Anja. And we're happy to be here and share some thoughts from our project on how to improve access to free school lunch as part of the education and participation benefit, which is Bildungs- und Teilhabepaket in German for those who might know it in German. But before we just jump right into the details, I wanted to just share some thoughts on why we are working on topics like this at the Digital Service. And this also connects very nicely to what Florian just said. I think what we believe, and many of you share probably in this room, is that a well-functioning welfare state is vital for maintaining public trust in public institutions and eventually also in our democracy. And I think this is crucial or key. But what we see on the other hand, and this is also has been said by Florian already, is that especially for social benefits, there are low uptake rates, there are non-user-friendly processes, application forms are very hard to understand, the whole system is very complicated and hard to understand for citizens, and on the other hand, there are very and rising high administrative costs for municipalities mostly to implement those social benefits. So what we have learned, on the other hand, what we have learned over the last couple of years, and what we would like to expand in the next couple of years, is that our approach and methods that you might have learned or get to know over the last sessions here are useful for redesigning. I used redesigning. I think it should have been remaking, how I learned, the welfare state. And what do I mean by this is we're using taking a very holistic approach. So we're looking at services and products, but also at very structural levels behind it. So we're also taking a look at policies behind those services. We take user-centeredness and collaboration very seriously, and we try to work iteratively and data-driven. So we aim for supporting the implementation of welfare state reforms, which are very high on the political agenda right now, by using our methods. And one of the projects we've been able to experiment on that is the project we wanted to talk to you about right now. And maybe this is also a little answer to the question before on where the political will comes from, because here at least there's some kind of political will in the coalition agreement from the current coalition, which says that they wanted to take care that all children with eligibility for the Bildungs- und Teilhabepaket are actually able to benefit from it with a view on the kostenloses Mittagessen, the free lunch at school or kita, with a special focus on the primary benefit, Kinderzuschlag and Wohngeld. So we took this as a political mandate, so to say, and initiated a project by the BMFSJ, especially by the Referat 401. Our project partner, Barbara, is also here tonight. So she actually initiated this project. She is responsible for the Ganztagsförderung, which is a huge program which introduced the legal entitlement to all-day care starting in 2026, which makes it all the more important that all the children which are spending more time in schools also can benefit from the free lunch there. And we set up an interdisciplinary team, so with my colleague Anja, senior, also service designer Nina, and UX designer Tito. And we also had a software engineer on the team for looking at interfaces and data standards which are relevant in this context. And we worked for 6 months on this project. And before we start showing what we did, maybe just for some of you who might not know what education and participation benefits actually is, or Bildungs- und Teilhabeleistungen. So it's a bundle of social benefits which stems from a federal constitutional court ruling in 2010 on the existence minimum, which basically said that the special needs from children and young people are not covered appropriately in the Grundsicherung at that time. So the government in 2011 then introduced the Bildungs- und Teilhabepaket in the SGB II, which and then families or people who are already eligible for Bürgergeld, Wohngeld, Kinderzuschlag, or Asylbewerberleistung or Sozialhilfe can then profit from the Bildungs- und Teilhabeleistung, which include 5 different types of social benefits, So you can get your costs reimbursed for excursions, multi-day trips at school, for school supplies, for travel expenses to school, and also for the costs for taking participate at the lunch at school. And what we were focused on the lunch as part of the Bundes Teilhabeleistungspaket in the primary benefit Kinderzuschlag, because especially in this Rechtskreis, there's a high administrative burden to get to those Bildungs- und Teilhabeleistungen, and we've also seen that the number of families who are taking or who claiming Kinderzuschlag has been rising over the last couple of years. Before I moved on, it's to say that it sounds like a very small social benefit because it only includes like small amounts for lunches, for school supplies, but it's for many families or target groups a very crucial social benefit they rely on. So it's a very important social benefit which exists, which makes it all the more urgent to look at why it's not working that well. So the BUT system in itself appears to be rather ineffective and inefficient. So there has been a low uptake rate of the primary benefit. So Kinderzuschlag, which we're looking at here, it's a similar number as in the household, the Wohngeld Bereich, which we learned about earlier. So it's up to 70% of people who are eligible for Kinderzuschlag are not claiming it. And then there's an even lower uptake of BUT benefits, based on the Kinderzuschlag. That's around 20 to 50% people are claiming those BUT-Leistungen. But this also differs between those different Leistungen because some of them are paid for directly. And on the other hand, there's a very high administrative costs, so up to 30% of the total sum are actually administrative costs for the municipal authorities implementing the BUT-Leistungen. So this is why we then raised the question, challenged the question, like how might we improve access to free lunchtime meals under the BUT-Leistungspaket in the context of Kinderzuschlag.
Right. Okay. So, oops. So, maybe a quick disclaimer before we start actually talking about the project. I also want to make, so I just kind of jumped into this project right in the final phase in the last 6 weeks or so. And actually my colleagues like Nina and Tito who did together with Jakob most of the work. Actually, unfortunately, they're not here tonight. They're in their well-deserved holiday. But so just to acknowledge that. Right. So how do we start this? Of course, like this, I don't have to explain the double diamond. We kind of use this well-proven method to kind of start with a run of research, understand the problem space, then kind of redefine or prioritize the problem a bit better. Like we also said, okay, let's focus on Kinderzuschlag and the lunch before we had a bit of a broader scope. And then we started developing hypotheses, prioritize these, and then also get feedback from families, for example, and also from local and federal administration. And then kind of came up with recommendations. This was a research project mainly, so we're this was not to implement anything yet, but we hope that some of these recommendations might be able to be implemented soon in some way or another. So we started with a round of research. There's a whole volume of studies, publications out there. Agora also has something out there, like for the Wohngeld, for example. So we looked through a lot of stuff. We interviewed 36 people. So the local BUT authorities who are responsible for kind of organizing that people get their BUT benefits. We talked to family benefits offices, which are the ones responsible for the Kinderzuschlag. They're part of the Federal Employment Agency. Then to families, of course, researchers, school authorities, because they're usually also have to do with the lunch, organizing the lunches, and also sometimes helping with the applications because it's so complicated. We talked to BUT advice services or advice offices, and the fact that there needs to be like a BUT advice service also tells you like how complicated it is to actually navigate that system. And then also to school caterers. And kind of the lenses that we applied here were basically like more or less 4 lenses. I mean, they're not really totally mutually exclusive, but like we looked at the laws and regulations governing this field. Then, of course, the family's perspective, the administrative processes, and then what are digitalization opportunities. And I agree totally with what Florian said. It's not like just because you can digitalize it, it will offer a better experience. But so you have to, I think, balance it well. But like, what else are you offering to people? And it's not always necessarily better access to benefits. So starting the laws and regulations, we looked at, for example, looked at the funding structure. So BUT it's paid for by the federal government, but it's implemented by the local authorities. So the federal government doesn't have like a direct influence on how this is implemented. So, and it's implemented very differently in the different municipalities. Um, and so they don't have a lot of control of how this is implemented. And it's also very indirectly kind of funding. It goes through the Länder, and it's under this weird budget of housing and heating is somehow included in there, which is not really logical. But and then it's kind of refunded based on the year, like what has been spent in the year before. And as the costs are rising, this is also, they sometimes have to, correct me if I'm wrong, like cover, or there's a delta somehow, and they don't always get everything, I think. Right. And also you can see like all the different levels are involved there. And then the local authorities, as Jakob already mentioned, they have to cover the administrative costs out of their own budget, which is up to 30%, which is quite a huge effort. Then we kind of, it's hard to see here really. It just makes the point, like we kind of created rule maps, like different kinds of visualizations, like what are the regulations applying there. And it's actually, so BUT is governed by 5 different jurisdictions. So depending on what you're eligible for as a main benefit, it would be like either Wohngeld, Bürgergeld, or eben Kinderzuschlag. So different processes will apply, and you have to apply it with different offices. So this is very hard to navigate, of course, and to understand, because you wouldn't have like a Verwaltungsdiploma when you apply for a benefit. And also, like you can see, like depending on what you get here, where do you have to go? Sometimes it's automatically that it's clear that you get the benefit, like the BUT. Sometimes you have to have an extra application, and then it's also differing between local authorities. Some of them interpret the rules differently, and so even if that's not the law, so they even have differences. So if you move to a different city, you might find that you need to go to a completely different office to get your benefits. And so even people from the Familienkasse told us, like, okay, people just drop out of this because they don't understand it. We also kind of mapped out the user journey, and you can see like there's all the different actors involved here. So you have the families, the administration, then of course different administration players. You have the caterers, advice services, the schools. So it's really like quite a complicated journey there. Looking at the families now, the families' perspectives, we interviewed 8 parents with kids in elementary school. Kind of tried to typologize them a little bit, like characterize like the different approaches they also took somehow to doing the job. So the chef, for example, was a lady that kind of preferred to cook the lunch meals for her kids. So somebody would say, I don't want lunch at school for my kids. I want to do it myself. So what are the key insights from interviews with parents? So one key aspect that's like Florian said before, a lot of people just don't know that this benefit exists or that they're eligible for it. And then even less so, like, how do I get there? Like, how can I claim this? That's a huge, huge barrier simply. And it is complicated. And even people who do get these benefits, like I think nobody from those 8 people that we talked to fully understood the concept of how exactly the process works. Then what Jakob already said, like it can offer much needed support to make ends meet for families, especially with several kids, because it just adds up if you have like 3 kids who get school lunches every day or whatever. So it kind of, the more kids you have, the more it helps you. claiming the benefits is a lot of work, as we already have heard. It's a lot of effort. Usually the women take care of it. That's what we learned in the interviews. And the info and the language usually used in all these forms that you have to upload or provide again and again, it's hard to understand. Even more so if you're not a native speaker or not, your language level isn't so high. Then some people also have lack of trust in the administration because of bad experiences before, like things take too long, you never know, like, where is my application at? Or some people even suspect people kind of drop their application somehow, it disappears. So there's not so much trust often. And then also parents expect, that's another aspect, like regarding digitalization. So people really expect seamless experiences, and they don't understand why they have to enter the data, obviously, a couple of times, the same data again, over again, with every authority that they're in contact with. Right. And looking now at the administration, what's their perspective? So something I want to kind of say upfront, so what really kind of struck me is that the people, I think most of them, I think, that we talked to, and of course there's a bias in it because they agreed to speak to us. Maybe they were the most motivated, but still I think it was really striking that they had a very high level of, let's make this happen. We want to make sure that families can benefit from these benefits. So that was really striking. I think that they really wanted to make it work and they were very motivated. So I found that really also very motivating. However, they struggle with, for example, there's no standard process on how on the local level it's organized, often very inefficient analog processes. Then also, of course, this has been mentioned before as well, they also struggle with this high workload with a shrinking workforce, which is really, really a major problem. And this means, of course, delayed claims processing, which kind of doesn't reinforce trust in the administration. And then a big point also is that there's no data sharing between the local authorities and the family benefits offices. And or the job centers, which is mainly because of either data privacy concerns or interoperability issues. So there are no interfaces. And this is really a major barrier as well, because like the local officers told us, if we could just get like a list of the people who have kids, who are eligible for kids, if they just kind of send us this list, we can proactively contact those families rather than waiting for them to find out that they might be able to apply for this. Right. And then finally, digitalization opportunities. One big opportunity that we definitely saw was the whole process of kind of doing the billing and processing the invoices for example, the lunch meals, because it's a huge amount of billings, of course, and it's also all done individually. So, for example, Region Hannover had more than 60,000 billings only from January to November 2025. It's mainly done paper-based or in Excel lists. They have to do like manual plausibility checks, and also some catering providers, because they also have a lot of work with that. They even kind of outsource the invoicing to agencies because it's so much work. And somebody from the job center told us that it's like an administrative nightmare, basically. So that's a lot of pain there, definitely. So what are the recommendations that we came up with? And I think you probably in this meetup, you've seen probably this slide, I guess, sometime. I think this is a Martin slide, maybe, I guess. You have these different levels where like public services, where the transformation in public services works. And kind of our recommendations somehow cover all of the levels, not at once, but like different levels of it. And we try to kind of have a range of recommendations that are at different areas. So either touch points directly to the citizens or also regarding guidelines and laws. And we kind of came up with 6 focus areas that where our recommendations are in. I just want to share some examples, not all of them. We'll soon have the full list on Bundes DigitalService Dev. I think probably sometime coming week, hopefully. You can look it up there. It's the whole project documentation online. So just sharing some examples. So what is a really fundamental enabler is enabling data sharing. between authorities. And one point there was definitely a main stopper was that nobody was sure, like, what is the legal, what is the area I can act in, right? Everybody is like, okay, I'd rather not do it because it's not clear. You have laws that are directly contradictory, like you have the OZG, like you have once only principle. On the other hand, you have like Ersterhebungsgrundsatz, a nice German word. So you have to always get the data exactly from that person. You cannot just say, hey, we had this data from this person already and we just give it to you. So it's like there's ambiguity legally. So this needs to be ironed out somehow. And then, of course, enabling data sharing between, this was a special point, like I mentioned before, between the Family Benefits Office and the local Bund authorities, especially for this context, that would really help and do this through common data standards and interfaces as well. And we also kind of came up with a little, like, how this might work in our context. So you get the kids' approval and then give the relevant data, because at the moment they also don't get any relevant data, to the Bundesverwaltung, and they can then inform people actually proactively, like, hey, you cannot have Bund now, rather than giving all the work to people. And then it's also, there's the difficulty of kind of understanding, even for the Familienkasse, which authority is responsible for this person. It's like, okay, find out, good luck. And they don't even know, but the citizens know even less so. Another area of recommendations is the whole topic of information and communication, obviously, because people don't know about it and don't understand it, and the information out there is not enough. I mean, so that's definitely a space of opportunity for the federal government to really make sure that there's consistent and accessible official content regarding Bund, provided in multiple languages, in easy language, and so on, step-by-step explanations. And also kind of consolidate the content that is on the federal information channels, for example, the different websites of the different ministries, that they have the same vocabulary, which is not necessarily the case at the moment. And in the next step, they could also then provide local authorities, schools, and so on, with those content blocks, content resources that they can download and adapt them there to their local special context then. So that would definitely be an area where on the federal level they can actually take advantage of their possibilities, because the local authorities often don't have enough money to kind of come up with quality content, even though some of them do try, and there are some good examples out there as well. And then the other side of information is, of course, what I said before, like proactively find the moments in the journey of people's lives when it's relevant, and to let them actually know proactively, okay, you're eligible, you might be eligible, like your kids starting school or kita, and not waiting for people to look for information, because many people won't even do that or not be able to do that. And so trying to find these milestones where you can reach out to families. And then same leveraging communities and parents' networks as multipliers of information. So go fish where the fish are. So finding the people where they are. Then we kind of looked at, of course, a lot of the work we looked at is like simplifying the application process, because that's so much work. And we kind of had different suggestions. An easy win is like at the moment people get like their approval note for kids. It has on page 7 somewhere at the last page or so, like well hidden, is like, okay, might also be able to get Bundleistungen. It's not very well explained, and it's like, okay, you have to apply with your local authority. You don't know which authority this might be. So we kind of did a little content redesign, like how can we make this better understandable? How does it work? You kind of link also to find your responsible local authority, and clear signaling of this is actually something you need to submit. This is, of course, not changing like the process or the structure, but it's like could be an easy, quick win. And the other one that was mentioned before is the same approach. So it's actually just like one touch point, one application. You could, for example, have this on the website of a Familienkasse. You can, with one application, have all the benefits that apply for you. And this is also something that we tested with people and got their feedback. Of course, this was very positive. But this then has the prerequisite of data sharing, of course, otherwise it won't work. And then this was regarding this administrative process of kind of processing all the billings and invoices and so on, to kind of come up with an infrastructure. We've talked about this before also, to provide an infrastructure to for the Bundes, we call it the Bundes system. And it has kind of, so the local administrations can kind of control all the different services. They can have automated plausibility checks, for example, so that will relieve them some of the work. It can have like invoicing for the Bundes services for the providers. You might have some like a dashboard for the families. I'll show you an example, and then also have valid data coming out of that system, because that is also a pain point at the moment, that there's no really high quality data, and it's hard to really say like the numbers, all the ones that we mentioned, they're kind of, yeah, it's there are no good numbers out there. Yeah, this is like what a dashboard for the families could look like. It could help them kind of see what's the status of my claims, because at the moment you don't know, you just wait until you get this notice. You could have an overview and like an easy access to claim other benefits that are connected with BUT. And you can also get notified when the reapplication is due, because every 6 months you have to apply again. And at the moment, make all the same submissions. Right. So, and then structural and policy approaches, thinking like outside of the whole BUT thing, is of course like so many people we talked to told us, well, actually the easiest thing would be just have free lunch for all kids, right? And not make it so complex. But yeah, we have this in Berlin, like elementary school has free lunch for all kids, and it would be interesting to also maybe learn more from that. How does it work? How does it go? What are the advantages? Maybe also the downsides. But currently, there is no political appetite to go down this path, obviously. So, but this is still something that we heard again and again. So we also wanted to point it out again. So like maybe pretty optimistic. Right. And this is kind of like all the recommendations that we have, and we kind of plotted them on like what could be quick wins, where maybe the Bund can act more or less independently, versus there's a lot of collaboration, and we see most of them, there's a lot of collaboration needed, and also what are things that will take more time. So I'm kind of trying to map that out a little bit. Yeah, and we kind of presented these findings at a workshop interdisciplinary with all stakeholders, that some of them that we had already talked to, like researchers, local authorities, family because it wasn't there, I think, but the ministries were there, and schools and so on. And that was really, I think that was really inspiring, because I think that was also like a lesson we took away from this. Like, it's really like it helps kind of enable this dialogue and exchange between those different stakeholders, which is something in general in public design that you will, public service design, that is really so, it brings so much energy, I think, and also better sustainable solutions, I guess. And also maybe we felt there was a lot of momentum in the room, and a lot of people acknowledging that this is not working as it is at the moment. And so we hope that our recommendations can also kind of contribute to making a lasting change there. Yeah, that's it. And yeah, you can see the project website soon if you want to learn more. Thank you.